Hello and welcome to today's edition of Weather or Not. I'm meteorologist Brian Karstens. Thank you for joining me. Scott has the day off. He'll be back tomorrow. We're going to talk about weather today. Of course, we've got a lot of things to discuss in terms of weather, and the biggest story by far is the temperature. Who out there is going to be watching the mercury today? Just a guess, right? A couple of you out there. How about yesterday? Well, these are some of the numbers, not all of them. Sioux Falls actually reached 46. We were at 70 yesterday in Valentine and in Phillip. Wow. The Southwest really went off to the races. And I think some of that air today will be moving eastward. That's how we're going to plant this in the forecast. And we're not done with mild weather this week. Sure, it's not going to be this warm all week long. We're going to talk about all the details, the ups and downs. There's even a chance that we might sneak in a system here on Wednesday night and Thursday that could produce a little bit of snow. Kind of think about what the weather's like usually in mid-March, late March. That seems to be the kind of the pattern we're in right now. On radar, too, a couple of interesting little side notes today to watch in the weather. You'll notice that we've got some initial radar returns coming in across Montana. And a lot of times in a situation like this, you'll see the radar blossoming and really showing more activity out there. But then at the low levels, we tend to evaporate a lot of that. So I think at the end of the day, yeah, this is probably going to show up here northwest South Dakota. But the total amount of water here is restricted. And I think that by the time this feature gets down to Sioux Falls, it's going to run out of energy, or at least the lift there needed to provide that chance of rain or snow. So we're just going to leave that alone and primarily park that across the Northwest today. But I did want to acknowledge that because some of that is changing today on the weather forecast. Right ahead of this cold front, that's where we're going to get the most powerful warming today. Now, I know Sioux Falls, it's pretty impressive to get that temperature at 55, 56, maybe. Do we go a degree warmer? We got to go 2 degrees warmer than that to get to the record, by the way, which is currently in the books here at 58 degrees. I know. Be nice to set a record if we're going to get this warm anyway, but we may not quite do that. However, Yankton is a candidate for a record today. The record high is 63. We're going a high today of at least 65. And by the way, the numbers in Nebraska are just I don't even know how to describe it. I've seen numbers as far as 75 down around Grand Island, Nebraska today. So no matter what happens, I guess we better cover this, right? The car wash warning today, another one of these in effect. Go ahead, make the lines. I guess that's where we'll be today. I know I need to do that. Our vehicle's been, I didn't get out to do that before we had to run to a gymnastics tournament this weekend. So that's on my agenda. But 56 degrees for a high today in Sioux Falls. And, well, we're not done with the mild weather. Coming up, we're going to be discussing more about the pattern. It looks like, for the most part here, we're going to be above normal pretty much all week. I don't see us being below normal anytime soon. The one thing that we do want to discuss, though, coming up is the chance of a little bit of rain and snow impacting us Wednesday night and into Thursday. That could just sneak in here just a little bit. So coming up, that is going to be our discussion point on the weather. We've got a lot to cover here on the extended forecast. See if some interesting things are brewing in the long-range picture. So stay with us. You're watching Weather or Not. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the program. I'm meteorologist Brian Karstens. As we look ahead to our weather, I did want to quickly go through some records for today. I didn't cover that in the first segment, and that's kind of important, isn't it, to see how warm we need to get today, not only just for today, but also, you know, these are numbers that we're going to have to keep watching even next week, as we'll explain the pattern coming up. But today, the record high for Sioux Falls, 58 degrees. I think that was set back in 1977. So It's been in the books a little while. We'll see if we come close. Huron, that's probably not going to happen. 58, your existing record. Spencer, Iowa, that's one that could fall today. 61 is very doable in northwest Iowa. Mitchell, that's a little closer call because of the timing of this front. But Yankton, yeah, I think Yankton's in good shape here. 63 is the going record. I think we probably can surpass that, maybe give you a bonus 2 or 3 degrees on that one. Even Worthington, Minnesota would be very, very close to a record level today. So just a little bit of food for thought on that. You know, interesting as you look at the pattern too, what's breeding this warm weather. It's coming in from the Pacific Northwest. We have an interesting snow graphic, the remnants of all of this wintry weather, of course, across the Great Lakes. A lot of snow on the ground in New England. You've been hearing about that. But you also notice the lack of snow in the Rockies. You see that around Salt Lake City and especially down into New Mexico. Colorado, you got to go up in the higher elevations to get that snow. Let's watch this graphic. I think that there's going to be some things to tell on this story the next 5, 10 days out, 15 days out. I'll leave it at that for right now. We're going to come back to this, so stay with us because I'm going to explain a little more about what's going on here and why I think it's important. Here are the numbers for tomorrow as we feature some, can I call it slight cooling? 40s, 50s. That's still above normal, no doubt about it here. And specifically, as we dive into the Futurecast Outlook, again, it's interesting to watch the precipitation that's on radar today. The far north, we're definitely getting some indicators of that feature there, but it's not like it's a huge amount of precipitation. It's just enough to pick it up here. There are your 60s, Sioux Center and Yankton, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Do you also see that wind pushing into the southwest? That's interesting to see. Maybe northwest Nebraska, we get some pretty gusty winds. And we also need to mention the fire weather. You know, this time of year, when you get into temperatures 50s, 60-degree weather, this fire weather concern is going to come with it. That's just part of it. So just be careful. There's a lot of common sense that goes a long ways when it comes to fire weather precautions. So I just wanted to mention that quickly because it will come back in our vocabulary at various points in the forecast. Now, you'll see that little bit of moisture tonight on radar in the north. Watch this, though. It vanishes, doesn't it? It's an upper-level feature that supports that, but that feature loses its punch as we go into tomorrow morning. And so those mid-level features are gone. We're looking at a pretty fair weather day tomorrow. A little northwest breeze, but for February levels, we're in the 40s. And even Rapid City there coming in close to 50 degrees. The difference going to Wednesday, we switched the wind around to the south. Do you notice those arrows coming up out of Nebraska? And we're beginning to push in some thicker moisture. Cloud bank, as that thickens, we're actually going to yield some precipitation with this feature. And you'll see that lock-in right there in southern and southeastern KELOLAND on Thursday morning. So, no, not a major system, but it's a good setup, I think, for the potential for a rain-snow combo. Even possibly, I'm not going to be surprised if we have some areas that get a coating of snow on Thursday morning. But the temperature forecast is just marginally cold enough for snow. And we're not talking any Arctic air whatsoever with this. So, think about March, think about, later when we're turning the calendar over to officially spring. We get systems like this all the time that push through. And you get a little bit of rain, you get a little snow, and then you blink and it melts. And that's probably what's going to happen with this because behind it, we already have a lot of 30s and 40s in the afternoon. And even going into Friday, I don't think it's going to change much at all. It's going to be at least into the 40s there too. And you're wondering about Valentine's Day and the weekend forecast. Well, I'm here to tell you it's going to continue the mild weather. The question we have is, what's going to happen next week? And what's going to happen beyond the 7-day forecast? Oh, we better talk about that. That's always interesting to get into those kind of discussions on this program. So stay with us. We'll be right back. You're watching Weather or Not. Welcome back. I'm Meteorologist Brian Karstens. All right, time to look at some, bigger picture items. We love to do that on this program, a chance to look beyond the local forecast and just a little bit more about how we fit into everything else going on, because weather often and always is actually related to the big picture. Okay, so here we go. We've got our above normal temperatures flooding the plains. That's how the forecast begins. You can see the colors on the map representing all of the above normal temperatures, and the pinks, the magentas, that's even farther up the scale. You can see clearly that signal very strong. It weakens a little bit this week. We're still above normal, but we're not by the margins that we have at the beginning of the week. But still, I want to call this out as, pretty fair weather. We've got this disturbance we just talked about on Thursday. And if you look carefully there, you can see some of the effects of that just a little bit. Nothing compared to New England. I mean, look at that. They're still well below normal. A lot of that's been hanging around. How about next week? Okay, I talked a little bit about this. And lo and behold, we've got those pink colors back at us here. Monday of next week, Tuesday of next week. I'm going to have fun with this in the next segment. We're going to look at the raw data from the European model. I'll save that for just a few minutes from now. But here's the interesting thing. Do you see what's going on this pattern? This takes us out to Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. We've got some phenomenal warmth potentially here. Now, obviously, that all has to work according to the timing and, clouds, those kind of things that can impact us ultimately. But if this trajectory continues, we're looking at some big numbers here next week. But also the West Coast. Do you see the blue there in California and up into upstate to Washington? Well, there is a trough developing, and this is the next map I want to show. This takes us on to the big view here. So let's hit the play button here. It's going to take into account this system we just talked about for Thursday. You're going to see it pop up right there. Okay, so that's part of the flow. It's just a minor disturbance. Then this weekend, got to mention this, big system going on in Kansas, Missouri, all the way to the Gulf Coast. Look at that. That is quite an impressive weather maker there. Looks like areas of showers and thunderstorms completely removed from Arctic air. None of that going on in the pattern. But it is interesting to see something like that pushing through, because when we see the replacement cycle of this weather pattern coming in late next week, like look at San Francisco, Los Angeles, you got a pretty decent trough. We've got the fueling mechanism for mountain snow in California, snow into places like New Mexico and Colorado. And this is part of the pattern that we think will eventually start breaking down things here in our neck of the woods just a little bit. It's a process. It's not going to happen all at once. But on that note, we're going to take a look at some of those pattern items, because I do think as we get into next week and beyond, some things are beginning to look a little bit more interesting. And I'll let you think about that as we go to the commercial break. Stay with us. You're watching Whether or Not, and we will be right back. Welcome back to our final segment of Whether or Not. I'm meteorologist Brian Karstens. Well, as promised, we're going to take a look at that big picture and a little bit more of the behind the scenes on how some of these things work. And so sometimes we like to share some of the raw data. We like to do a little more of the meteorology behind the forecast. And this is an interesting look at the European model and its selection here of things going on in the forecast. And I'm just going to make these side wings disappear for a minute so we can look right at the middle of the screen. And what do we see here? Well, these are the raw numbers from the European model for Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And what do you see? Well, there's one number that stands out in the middle of that screen. This one, 65. What day is that? Follow the bar chart all the way down to the bottom. That is February 17th. Now, remember, that's not our forecast. We're not forecasting that yet. But what I will tell you is that that's a clue that we've got some potential in this pattern to run some big numbers. That's, again, early next week. Everything before that, 40s, 50s, this lines up very well with our going 7-day forecast. In fact, the overnight lows are, frankly, closer to the highs for this time of the year, what we typically would see. Now, you do notice there's a little cooling in there. See that? February 19th, the 20th. Now, keep that in mind because let's look at something else here. We're going to compare or contrast this with the American model, the GFS, okay? Now, it wants to run the same idea, 60-degree possibilities early next week. But do you notice this here? Interesting to see that. That's colder weather. Okay, so why is that? Well, the models are handling that differently, aren't they? And that's important to recognize. And, that's not uncommon to see that at this stage of the game here. Let me bring up the European model just as we look upon the chances of rain or snow, because I want to point this out, too, that the precipitation pattern here is kind of interesting. So here we go. We're going to walk through the weekend forecast. So there's that system I just pointed out right there across Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri. So that's system number one, we'll say. Fairly decent-sized system there. Now, what I want to do here is I want to go out a little bit farther into the future, okay? So we're going to take you out into that next week. Now, notice what's going on here. Why are we warming in the plains? Well, pretty easy to see here. We've got a trough and a low-pressure center to our west. And if you can't see that well here on this picture, let me show you the upper air pattern. Okay, so we're going to bring up this. This is looking at 500 millibars. So we're looking at the depth basically about halfway through the atmosphere. Gives us at least the troposphere where the weather's happening. And you see the blue and the green colors there across the west. And that is, again, a pretty good signal that we've got storm system that's going to be following suit in there. And typically right ahead of that, that's where we warm up in the plains. Okay, so if all that comes together as forecast, let me bring back the wings here so you can see that a little bit better. Again, that's the thinking, that would break this down. And you'll notice that we go through time. Now, again, that takes us out to the 24th of February. Kind of runs another system here to our north and kind of a zonal flow there. Interesting to see this product, too, here lighting up a little bit. This is the grand total of snow the next week to what? Well, it actually goes out a little bit farther. This goes out to the 24th of February. So actually we're looking out the next 1 to 2 weeks. And there is definitely a signal of more snow in the Rockies. This is one thing I keep bringing up, and I think that's very important because we have not been getting that this winter. We've been seeing a lot of northwest flow. A lot of the snow has fallen to our east. And then the Rockies and the Great Basin kind of left out. So this is going to be a good recharge for Colorado, California, the Sierra Nevadas. Excellent opportunities for snowfall in that part of the country. And as a result of that, look at your temperature anomalies. See how that tends to stay cooler right in there? Okay. Now, everybody's wondering, well, okay, Brian, are we going to actually get cold again here? Do we have the makings of that in the pattern? Well, good thing to ask, because let's look at the AI version of the European model. Now, I'm going to back this up to the beginning. So there we go into the rest of our 7-day forecast. Clear as day, we're going to be above normal. There's nothing in here at all that's cold. But as meteorologists, what we want to start watching here is that this is starting to break down. We're starting to watch British Columbia and Alberta. Okay. Now, that's only one single run of the AI model. Okay, you can put some weight into that, but let's go deeper. Let's go to the ensemble, okay? Now, think of this like an orchestra, okay? You've got multiple members coming together. We're collecting a suite of data, and then we're comparing and contrasting what is changing, what's staying the same, what do we see here for likely evidence to support our theory about either cooling or warming. Well, let me bring this up now as we wrap up the program today, because this is important. The AI ensemble is also much colder in southwestern Canada. You see that by the 20th of February, kind of sitting out there at the end of the forecast. So what that kind of represents is the scenario of the dam bursting. Now, is it going to be as cold, or could it be as cold as what we just saw in January? Well, this is the February version of that, and it would be the end of February. So, I'm not here to tell you we're going to get super cold, but sure, we can cool off. And it's important because of the position of that cold. If that's where this thing routes, you can actually track storms right through the middle of this, okay? And I want you to remember that, because as we go through time, in fact, even on the ensemble, the precipitation forecast, this is just precipitation. I'm not looking at rain or snow. I'm just looking at pure water here, okay? So this is how we start. This is day one. This goes out with time, and you can see that system this weekend right there. See that bullseye in Oklahoma? So it does a good job picking up on that. We're actually not really seeing a bunch until later in the period, and then things start to pick up. Not just here, but also the West Coast. This is a classic pattern for them, but much of the Deep South and into the Ohio River Valley, that's a pretty robust pattern for mid to late February. And if you want to even look at the anomaly, look at the greens showing up here. So we're going to be above normal to our south and to our west. And, for today, that's a good place to land on that data. I think that the snow will obviously accompany some of that. Your 15-day total on snow. New England, oh my goodness, look at that. They're going to get pounded with more snowfall over the next 10 to 15 days. But look at this. Even this one agrees with Colorado, Utah, Nevada, California, all the way up into the Pacific Northwest. It is a much more bullish pattern. And if you just like to look at things like this, just for fun, let me show you this. I don't show this on TV. We don't get to this, but on this program we do once in a while. That is your extended 32-day snowfall total from the operational. This is the extended run of the European model, but it jives with that. It takes all that snow and it tries to start some patterns here across the northern part of the country. So let's see what happens. Maybe winter's not over with yet. I'm not a believer the winter's over, and I don't think you are either. Probably not. All right, well, that is today's program. Thanks so much for watching. Have yourself a great day.